Hey guys, welcome back to Allison Customs Project Car TV. Today I'm messing with the 67 Mustang from California, and went out and drove it this morning, which is the first time I've actually driven it, done anything with it. It's been sitting here for getting close to 2 months, month and a half, something like that. So the Chevelle is basically done. It's going to go get an alignment and the AC charged and then shipped off by the end of the week. So hopefully we'll get all that stuff done and get one drive in it before it leaves. But in the meantime, I needed to get started on this Mustang, and I drove it this morning, and it pulls left the whole time and walks the road. It just, every time you hit a bump, it's headed somewhere. After about 30 minutes of driving, you kind of get used to it and don't notice it quite so bad. But initially, I thought I had, a couple flat tires or something. So we're going to get it up in the air, check all the suspension out, the ball joints, all the insulator pads, everything front and rear, and just see what the condition of everything is. So this is the first time it's going up, and you'll get to see it as I do. Alright, so let's take a look at what the underside of this car looks like. Alright, so let's see what all we can see in here. First thing I notice is it looks like we have a front main seal leaking a little bit. Not bad, because it's just a seep. It's not a lot of fluid anywhere. Next thing I see is somebody has used copper for the transmission lines, which is not probably the best product. We have the original Ford. Well, actually, let's see. Let's stop right there. We have a power steering pump leak. Can't quite tell where it's coming from. There's a recent oil filter on here, so it's had an oil filter change. We're running headers, but some of our wires have been melted. And those are for the O2 sensor. We also have a plug in there that's not hooked to anything. And our power steering. So we have the stock power steering, the stock Ford power steering. It looks like it's had some new lines put on it. Although it doesn't look like it was serviced when it was plumbed, so it's all gunked up. Ball joint caps are coming off. Our idler arm cap is coming off. We have some more plugs on the hook. Says AC pump, which I assume means the compressor. Pretty big aftermarket sway bar on here. The bushings are actually new here, and the sway bar bushings are new. There's what appears to be new cotter pins. The way the Ford spring works, and I'll pull the tire and we'll look at it in a little while. Spring is on top of the upper A-arm, and there's a perch there that allows it to pivot, and there's new bolts in that for that pivot, so that's probably been replaced. Ball joints look, it's hard to tell. Some of them look like they've been replaced and some of them don't. I was thinking I'd heard an exhaust leak. Really not seeing evidence of it yet. And the speedometer doesn't work, but there's no cable in here either, so unless this is a late enough model that we have an electronic drive instead of a cable drive, we should be able to fix that. In fact, none of the factory gauges worked except possibly the fuel gauge, and I'm not sure on that because right now it reads half full, half empty, so need to talk to the owner and see if it moved while he was driving it. This ram looks like it's actually been replaced for the power steering. I keep going back to the steering because this thing is just awful on the road. Missing the inspection plate for the transmission. Parking brake linkage is all here. Some of it looks like it's the original and kind of worn out. It's there, and then somebody has used a cable and some hardware cable clamps, which is really not the right part for that. Let's bring you further back now. A couple of clamps. They put 2 clamps on each end, which at least makes it safer, but that's really not the right way to, you know, that's fine on your fence. Not a great idea on your car when, you know, it's, yes, it's the parking brake, but it's also called the emergency brake for a reason. And you'd sure hate to have these clamps let go and tear up. You can see the fuel line they've put in here, and got a couple unions in it, which none of that's real bad. You look in the engine bay, the fuel lines go up and they cross over in front of the or behind the engine, and then have a couple more joints. And right now it runs right above the exhaust, which probably doesn't help it a whole lot. Somebody has added a what I'm guessing is an aftermarket unibody subframe tie, you know, subframe connector. I'm having a hard time telling if it was essentially custom made or if somebody bought a aftermarket bar and put it in there. It's probably plenty strong. It's kind of cobbled together, but it's all welded in. There's no undercoating on the car, which, well, there's a little bit of the factory original undercoating, but all the work they did, some of it's painted, some of it's not. There you go. Take you back here and we're going to look at something I just found. So this is the leaf spring perch, and the nut is, I can put my finger behind the nut, it's almost off. So it wasn't likely to save your life. Bolt hasn't pulled out at all. And this side is the same, and the bolt has pulled out all the way to the end of the stop. Our parking brake cables are zip tied to the rear axle. So let's get a view for that. So these are the parking brake cables here, and they're zip tied to the axle. 3 zip ties, I mean, you know, that's almost enough. Another joint for a fuel line. Got a couple joints here for the brake lines. Actually not too bad. Not either an old, yeah, the old original fuel line is on here being used as a return line, which is fine. Would have been nice if they'd run the main fuel line along with it. Where it's at is really not in the way except for up here. And then back here, the original one is actually crimped. So it's, or squished, so it's probably not passing a whole lot of fuel. We've got a aftermarket rear sway bar, which is good. Missing all the rubber on the rear springs. And I'll have to check. I'm not sure that if it's missing or if this just car didn't have it. So I've worked on a 70 model and a 69, and they had rubber pads in here. The owner had complained about some of the braking, and definitely have something going on here. There's a film on the rotor, quite a bit of fluid. So I think we have a leaking wheel cylinder or axle seal on this side. Additionally, The passenger side rear definitely has. The film on there is nasty, so I'm sure, and there's a lot of wet area down here, so I'm very sure we have a bad wheel seal or axle seal on this axle. There's a lot of grime on the wheels, so I think we're going to need to do seals on the rear end. I guess one of the things that's kind of good and bad about that is it is a center section rear axle. Not positive, but I think this will be a 7.5 inch. Oh, good, we have the tag here so we can clean that up and see what gears are in here. But because of that, the owner has been talking about maybe wanting to do a set of gears in the car too. So maybe easiest to pull the whole thing apart, do gears and the whole bit, and get some paint on this axle, or this axle housing. Which that will help with that, and some rear pads will improve the braking. Overall, the car is very clean and very good condition. I have not found why the steering is so bad, unless maybe it never got an alignment. Although, yeah, there's quite a bit of scuff here on the inside of the tire. Same on the driver's side, but it's not terrible. And knowing that it's had 800 or so miles recently put on it, you'd really think that would start to show. So we'll get it down a little lower where we can get a hold of the wheel and check for looseness in the ball joints or something. Otherwise, I would have to suspect that we either have a bad cylinder here, something going on with the power steering, because it just is all over the road. It really should be a lot tighter. One of the things we could consider, I'll do a little research on, is there may be some kits out there where we could swap it over to rack and pinion, which would get rid of this hanging mess and clean a lot of this up, give it a lot tighter steering, which make it more enjoyable to drive. So while some of it's not the way I would necessarily do it myself, most of it looks really good. The front brakes look like they're pretty, working pretty evenly. All right, so next up, we'll get it back down, check the ball joints, check for looseness in the rear axle bearings, and start making a list of the things we think need to be worked on. So let me show you how I'm going to check these ball joints. So what you want to do is, with the car up, no weight on the wheels, just move the wheel back and forth, left to right, and you kind of hear everything. You can kind of hear some rattling. Some of that's going to be okay. Some of that's just movement in the parts. What you want to make sure is, as it moves, if there's any play, which will feel like there's a dead spot or a loose area. And I think for the most part, we have pretty good. There's a little bit of looseness. I mean, such a tiny amount. I could be imagining it. I'm going to check the other side. When you check this side feels pretty good. The other side has a lot of play. We might be talking 1/4 inch, but when you're doing 50 miles an hour and your wheels are doing this, that's bad. So that checks your steering components, and really also checking your bearing, your spindle bearing, because if it's loose, you'll feel a lot of that too. The other way you check is, if you're checking ball joints, you're going to go up and down with the tire. And hopefully this microphone will pick this up, but you'll hear this. And that clunking noise, I had to put a camera on the back side, because normally the easiest way is you get a helper to move it and you start looking around, but basically the top ball joint is moving inside the housing for the ball joint. So maybe some grease would help it, but at this point it's probably wore out. It's not worth risking. So we'll put some new ball joints on it, and I'm going to do some video from the backside so you can see what that looks like. In the steering, I'm also going to show you some video because I found what I think is causing our steering issue, which as far as the left to right flex movement that we're getting, and I'll show you that from the other wheel. Okay, so I'm going to try and film this enough. What we're looking at is the top ball joint on the passenger side. I know the car's wiggling too, but if you really watch that joint and listen, you can kind of hear it clicking. Okay, and this is the driver's side. Again, looking at the upper ball joint, we have a little play, not nearly as much as the passenger side. And the clunking sound or whatever is much softer, but still really too much play. So all of that translates straight into how the car drives on the road. So what I want to show you is Ford has an interesting power steering system. So it has a RAM, and then it has another controller where these two lines go up and they feed into another control unit, and which I think is called a shuttle valve. But the place where I think we're getting our steering movement versus the ball joint movement that I've shown you already, is right here in this bushing. So this is where the steering ram mounts to the frame, and when I move the passenger side tire, which is where I was getting the most noise or play out of this, watch that bushing. So what you're seeing is that rod moving in and out and flexing those bushings. And typically, like shock bushings, when they get tightened down, you tighten that down until the rubber is flush with the outside edge of those metal cups. That's the way I was always taught to tighten a shock down. That's how you knew it was when it was tight enough. And I've always treated these rams exactly the same way, and I've never had that much play in one. So I will be taking that apart, checking to see if those rubbers or if there's a piece missing inside there. And then if the rubbers are good, we can tighten that down. If they're not, we'll get those parts coming with the ball joints. So something there to look at. I noticed the sway bars are kind of the end links for the sway bars here. Now, right now there's no pressure on the sway bars at all, so we don't expect to see them. But these sway bars should have, these bushings should be the same way. You tighten everything down with weight on the wheels until the bushing is about the same diameter as the washer, and that's how you know when it's tight enough. So I imagine, based on what I've been seeing, is nothing was really tightened properly, and what that has caused is a lot of premature wear of these components. So we'll go ahead and check some of this other stuff and then get some parts on order. Then I'll get you back and we'll show you guys in another video how to replace all this stuff. There you have it. There's a review. I wish I'd have got some video of driving it. It sounds good. It drives pretty well as far as takeoff and stop. Obviously we found issues with the rear brakes, so it could stop substantially better. I don't think there is a adjustable proportioning valve on here, so when I'm working the rear brakes, I'll probably swap that over so we can put a little adjustment in it, or at least make sure we have a high quality disc to disc, front disc, rear proportioning valve so that we're getting the proper ratios. Some other little things that we found are like this fender well has some areas where the metal has been pulled out and it's actually cracked the paint. So I imagine this tire has gotten into this a time or two. Again, could be because there's not it may not have a good alignment on it or something of that nature. So in the end, what we know about the car is it definitely needs top ball joints. It looks like most of the other parts have been replaced, but I will probably get a front end rebuild kit that'll do upper and lower ball joints, and a couple of the tie rods looked questionable, so probably just replace all that, make sure we have good quality, get it in for a good alignment, get some rear brake seals on it, new rear brake pads, proportioning valve possibly. And once that's done and we know it's driving and stopping the way it should, then we can start to work on some of the performance stuff, like possibly the rear gears, and we may do that with the rear seals, like I said earlier. But then we can work on, it has no heat or AC. That complete unit has been taken out, and I would really love to be able to put a factory style unit back in it. I'm not sure that's going to be a possibility, but I'm going to check into that and see how big it is on the engine bay side, because the new engine has taken up a lot of that kind of room. Possibly need a different set of valve covers or something, and tweak some fuel lines or whatever that's in the way under there. So I'd like to put a factory style heating and AC unit back in here so that it all fits under the dash correctly and works with the controls. There's a company that I'm going to check with that I think takes the older style box, puts modern components in it, and makes it all electronic. Works with the original controls, but they'll all be electronic for better control of the system. So we'll check into that, using the 90s Mustang 50 HO compressor and all that kind of stuff. Additionally, we've got some dress up stuff we want to do and make it pretty, but the owner is very adamant that safety comes first. Let's get it running correctly, driving correctly, stopping correctly, and then he's willing to spend some money as he has it on the pretty stuff. So we'll get there first and see what he wants to do after we've fixed all the things we've already found. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, and we'll see you again in the next video. See you again on next video. I got some Tool Bag Tuesday videos coming out for you, hopefully starting this week again. And you guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Get back with you when I get some parts so we can get this thing all put together. I'll get back with you when I get some parts so we can get this put together and get it safe running down the road, get an alignment done on it. And should be back with you soon with some Tool Bag Tuesday stuff. Otherwise, we'll see you next week with another video. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching Allison Customs Project Car TV. Like us on Facebook and check us out at AllisonCustomsOnline.com.